Sitting close to its neighbors Iran, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the tiny kingdom is surrounded by warm waters of Persian Gulf, being known as Bahrain. Its name in Arabic, Al-Bahrain, means two seas. The strategic location of the island has made it appealing to others during its short history. The kingdom was separated from Iran in 1971. For those not familiar with its social affairs, Bahrain is famous for its fertile land, its fresh spring water, its natural pearls, and indeed glamorous international F1 races.
Delight for Lewis Hamilton and a 7th consecutive.
The dictators ruling the kingdom are using such eye-catching images to blanket the silent and ongoing crackdown on ordinary citizens who speak up against it in the most peaceful form of dissent possible. October 2018. The ruling regime in Manama celebrates its membership in the United Nations Human Rights Council after it is controversially elected to have a seat in the council from 2019 until 2022. Despite the move immediately drawing global criticism, the regime's foreign minister labeled the shambolic elections as what he called the culmination of the wise policies of King Hamad bin Isa al Khalifa in consolidating rights and freedoms. And the year 2019 started while the House of Khalifa had no plan to amend its dark records on human rights. In contrast, Bahraini citizens were about to experience widespread crackdowns on their most basic rights. Only a matter of weeks were needed to lay bare the true nature of Bahraini democracy. The regime announced general elections for November 2018 without a single opposition. Officials claimed 67% turnout despite the fact that over 70% of the total population was technically barred from participating in the election thanks to its ban on any credible opposition party. The crackdowns gained momentum shortly after the so-called election. Despite Bahraini citizens' ongoing demands for most basic human rights, the West's complicity with Manama regime is still going on, ranging from all-out backing in international organizations to direct collaboration in detention and suppression of Bahraini peaceful activists.
Mainly the United States and the UK are backing the tyranny in Bahrain. They are supplying the regime with all sorts of weaponry and anti-people, anti-riot weapon, and also supporting the regime in crackdowns on human rights. Some of the American and British now they are serving as advisors to the regime of Bahrain, especially in Ministry of Interior. They are guiding the way to put pressure on the detainees and also to how to confront with the people demonstrating in the streets. There have been lots of measures against the human rights, including the revocation of citizenship of 138 activists, Bahraini activists, and lots of sentences of long-term jail, including life imprisonment.
The regime is systematically stripping peaceful activists of their citizenship as one of the most disturbing methods used to silence dissent. Many of the victims are rendered stateless, and tens of them are already ordered for deportation. Bahraini criminal courts are empowered to strip citizenship under July 2014 amendments to the 1963 citizenship law. Peaceful protesters and human rights activists are forced to confess terrorism activities under an unfair trial system which relies heavily on torture, the practice of which, according to international organizations, remains systematic. But crushing any form of dissent doesn't stop there. A significant number of Bahraini activists are sentenced to long-term jails and even death. The Khalifa regime also enjoys Western tactics to bury all the evidences under a huge pile of fabricated news. For a tiny country such as Bahrain, the country has an unusually large number of human rights NGOs, mainly engaged in whitewashing human rights abuses. These NGOs are mostly based in Europe. The government-sponsored so-called NGOs work in parallel with a huge Western-based propaganda machine. Manama enjoys extensive and ongoing campaign to promote and improve its international image, particularly in the Western media. The American and British PR firms also help out Bahrain's brutal monarchy, spinning Washington and London on their behalf, and the two capitals' desire to keep quiet on the situation contributes to the West's mainstream media's silent stance.
Actually, now there is a joint electronic army, which is between the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Bahraini regime, just campaigning on the social media, especially on Twitter, to show or whitewash all the crimes of these three states. And of course, some of them are dedicated to Bahrain.
Even Bahraini dual nationals living in the Western countries are not immune from the regime's harassments and abusive tactics. The West, and in particular Britain and the United States, also provide the regime with technical facilities and relevant technologies to hunt down ordinary citizens with slightest level criticism against the regime. Several British and American tech companies have been caught red-handed while colluding with the regime's security forces in IT intrusion and remote spying of dissidents. Europe-based companies also provide the Bahraini regime with cutting-edge technologies to centralize internet censorship.
The people of Bahrain were very much successful in not leaning. For the last 8 years, they have been struggling, they have been demanding, they have not accepted to surrender as slaves to the regime. They have the power to continue their struggle, and they will continue, even though it will be hard for them. Every family now in Bahrain has someone who has been either killed in prison or in the streets, protests, or he or she is in jail or in the exile. But the people are very patient, and they are continuing their struggle, and we see that the future is for the people of Bahrain and their sovereignty in their own country.